Welcome to the Lovers Lounge podcast, where we talk to experts and other guests on topics related to, love, relationships, and sex. I am your host, Tina Love, and on this episode, we have Maureen E. Hosier. She's a PhD who is a licensed clinical psychologist. She's located in Los Angeles, California, and has been in private practice for the past 23 years. Now, Maureen specializes in repairing troubled dynamics of partners in a relationship. And I'm so glad to have her on the show. Welcome, Dr. Hosier, to the show.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Tina. I'm glad to be here.
Yes. And would you prefer that I called you doctor? Would you prefer, are you okay with me calling you Maureen? How would you like me to?
I'm fine with whatever you're comfortable with.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm so glad to have you on the show. I want to dive right into your book because it sounds so very interesting. But before we do, I'd like to kind of find out, what led you to this line of work, 23 years. So how did you get into this line of work and why? Why couples? Why working with couples?
Well, I didn't really know that's where I was going to end up or land. But when you ask me the question, I have a memory that comes up, and I'm sitting in the back seat of the car with my two sisters, and my parents are in the front seat, and they are arguing.
Oh, my gosh.
And that happens over and over and over and over again. And it was so difficult to, be there in that moment and not have them stop. So I think that's why I finally landed here in that trying to figure out how to. I want to help couples because they all come in practically the same place. They're stuck.
Yeah. And just imagine, there are probably children who are living that out right now, just like you were as a young girl in the backseat of the car, listening to mom and dad, or listening to them have conversations that were heated. And children get a sense, they know when it's not good, and they just want happiness. They just want to feel normal and happy, and just have a great relationship within their family. So it's interesting that you go back to that moment. So I'm hoping that as we're talking today and having our discussion, if there are people out there who are experiencing this right now, like in a relationship that oftentimes they find themselves in conflict or arguing, and it's just not good. I'm hoping that you can shed some light for these folks on, how to deal with that. Now, you and your sister, you wrote a book called You'll Do Anything for Her, and you have another one, You'll Do Anything for Him. And ideally, that sounds like what many couples are openly and willingly wanting to do, but I don't know, maybe there's a different spin that you have on this. So can you tell me a little bit about what's meant by this title of your book and an overview of it?
Well, I think that a lot of couples, and not every couple, but many couples, one person gives themselves up in order to be in the relationship. They want that person focuses on, takes care of, is ready and willing and available to be there for their partner, without their awareness. It is the way that they function. It is the way that they love.
Mm-hmm.
And without realizing they're not their genuine self within the relationship, which means that we're not going to focus on someone, 100% of the time. I mean, none of us can do that, but I mean, I have two sisters. We all did it. We all went into relationships where we focused on the other to make them happy.
I see.
And that it doesn't last if you don't get back. We didn't get back what we needed from our partner because our partners were just fine.
Mm-hmm.
doing what they
Right.
were doing.
Right. Right. Yeah. So this is why you've written the book about people who do that to either, a male person in the relationship or a female. And so basically throughout the book you're what talking about, you know, how this happens and maybe why it's not such a good idea, or can you tell a little bit about what we would find in your book, because I want people to go out and get it, of course, but what should they expect within the book?
Well, number one, before I do that, it's not quite available yet. It
Okay.
did come off the market, and I'm reissuing it here, I would say, in the next couple of months.
Okay, great.
Um, both of them. Um, now, tell me your question again,
I was going
your
to say,
specific.
yeah. So you've talked about how, what that pretty much means is that somebody gives up themselves, pays attention more to the other person than they do themselves. So what would we expect in reading the book? You talk about doing this, whether it's a male or female. What would we expect then in the book when you talk about this?
Well, we we talk from the position of the person. We're focusing from the position of the person who gives up themselves.
I see. Okay.
So and we're talking about feelings. So the style of the book is a little different than most books, and they're generally 1 to 2 or maybe 3 uh, sentence paragraphs,
Okay.
but they're about what people who function this way, excuse me, they're what they're feeling.
I see.
So we talk about the patterns in the relationship, so the attraction and who you're going to be if you're a person who did self up in order to focus and make the relationship work. Um, what you're doing, what are the patterns in the relationship, so the attraction, the infatuation period, and then it doesn't last.
Hmm.
And then for some reason, the connection between you changes. And um, in that in that vein, then the connection between you changes, and you feel he's not thinking about you.
And you almost feel like you've lost yourself, kind of, it seems like. Yeah.
Yeah, you feel he wants too much from you. So you have been focusing, but then there's an escalation in what he wants. And I'm saying he or she
He
because
or
the
she.
books
Yeah.
are separate.
Hmm.
Or something in your life changes together, or when he changes, you change and confront him. So we're just speaking about what are the general dynamics in that kind of relationship.
Got it.
Because as
Okay.
I say, as you go along, if you're attracted to someone who's dynamic, who's fun, who's um, seems to have their life together and is maybe adventurous and probably something that you're not.
Mm.
You're not as easily able to be uh,
Spontaneous or
yeah, spontaneous and alone, not able to be alone. That's
right.
a big issue.
I see.
And are a bit timid, frightened inside, maybe.
Mm.
So you're really wanting, and you really want a partner because it's as if the partner is going to make a life
I see.
for you.
I see. It almost feels like, or it sounds like too, how oftentimes you hear people say, well, this person, completes me, or, whatever. So
Yes,
it's almost as though this person looks to that other person to be that final piece for them, or
Yes,
okay,
yes,
okay.
yes.
So what?
So
Yeah,
no, go ahead then.
I
Oh,
was
I
gonna.
was going to say, let me say this.
Okay.
Um, so you accommodate, you, you may feel like a people pleaser. You maybe even consider yourself a doormat. I've heard people say that,
Wow.
and they can't stop doing that. They can't be for themselves
Okay.
because this dynamic or this focus is what they learned to do in their childhood.
That was where I was
Was
going next. Yes, yes.
okay.
Yeah. So why are, so it's due to childhood that sets them up for this kind of dynamic, then it sounds like. And what about that childhood? What might a person who is inclined to do this, what might their childhood have looked like that was the complete setup for them giving up themselves in the relationship?
You know what? I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm going to
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you
Mm-hmm.
to answer try to answer your own question.
Okay.
Okay? And the way that I would like you to try to do this is get out of your head.
All
I don't
right.
want you to think.
All right.
I want you to feel
Okay.
what might have happened to a child that the end result is they're focusing on others
I see.
and specifically another who completes them.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I have a pretty good idea. I'm going to give an example. Maybe you can tell me if you think what do you think?
Okay.
I'm going to just say perhaps it could be a child of an alcoholic, just for example, because the child of an alcoholic may, all of their life, they were trying to please and make their parent happy, who was the alcoholic, because they knew that if they felt like, anyway, that if they didn't make that person happy or do what they needed to do for that person, perhaps they would drink or they'd be out of control or whatever. So, is
Right.
that a good example of maybe
An
one?
excellent
Okay.
example. Let me just clarify it a little bit more, and that it's a perfect example.
Sure. Thank you.
Whose focus is the parent focus on?
Who is the alcoholic parent focused on?
Yes.
The alcoholic parent is usually focused on themselves and their
Oh,
alcoholism.
exactly.
Yeah.
So the child is left emotionally alone.
Yeah.
And that's not the direction the focus needs to go for a child. A child doesn't have the resources inside. A young child doesn't have the resources inside to be alone. And if that kid has an alcoholic parent, and let's say the father and let's say the mom is not, but the mom is focusing on the her partner as well, so the child's very much not getting the direction of the focus and attention and valuing and cherishing and enjoying and remembering, being remembered
Right.
and being acknowledged and all those things that
Mhm.
a little kid needs desperately so they can learn to be themselves.
Uh-huh.
The focus is going the wrong way.
Yes. Okay. I want to give another example,
Okay,
because not everybody out there maybe hasn't had an alcoholic
that's right.
parent before. So I want to give another example. So,
Okay,
what if I have a parent? I don't want to necessarily say they're narcissistic, but they are so into their work. I'll give that example. They're so
okay,
into their work. They're somewhat of a workaholic, and
okay.
they really, their focus is their work. But they have this child or children who very, you know, they don't really get a lot of attention from that parent because the parent is focused on every time they see their parent, they're on their computer or they're on their phone or they're at work, and so they just don't seem to get the attention that they want. Could that be another example?
It really can. Yes. Let's see how I want to say this.
Yeah.
Um, if there's one, even if there's one parent of two parents, let's say two parents are there,
Uh huh.
and one of them is pretty attentive and there, and the focus does go toward the child, but you've got the other parent that is not,
Mm.
and is just not involved with the child.
Yeah.
And that too can also cause that kid great pain because not being accepted
Yeah.
is also a big issue
Right.
by one parent. So it's we call that, my sister and I wrote this book. We call this the important parent.
Mm.
And the important parent is, and there could be two important parents because they're off into their own lives
Yeah.
and really aren't there for a child. If the child has some love somewhere, then that is so helpful, like a grandmother or a nanny or
Yeah.
housekeeper
Yeah.
or friend,
Right.
somebody. This kid, every kid needs love and needs to know who they are. So they have to have, we have to, as children, have people focused on us. A
Yes.
lot of times in many families, the focus goes towards the parent.
Right. Yeah. Because I'm gonna just be vulnerable here, I guess. You know, my father was a hard worker, and he his thought was to provide, right? Because many men,
Yeah,
that's what they do. That's what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to be the breadwinner and provide for the family and take care of whatever. And so I don't think he intentionally meant to not give me the attention and the love, but in his eyes, his love and attention was going to work every day, working, 12-hour shifts maybe, because he was trying to provide for me. You know what I mean?
right,
But
right,
yet I'm
right.
this teenage daughter who is at home, who I had the attention from my mother because she was the one that was more available. But my father was oftentimes not available because maybe he worked all day, and when he got off work, it's midnight and I'm asleep. So I was never able to really have that connection with him or that, that attention. And
Right,
so it was something that I wanted, but just wasn't able to get because he was always, out
right,
working. But again, good intentions as a parent.
right.
Um,
Well, very good intentions
yeah.
because he was supportive and there and caring.
Yes.
Hmm.
However, it's a setup for sometimes the child, as you say, being more accommodating, more focused on others than they are themselves. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay.
it can be.
All right.
Not necessarily. I mean, kids can go other directions too when they don't get um, the focus and
Mm-hmm.
attention
Mm-hmm.
that they need. They could be acting out and running away.
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of depends, I think, on the child's temperament
Yeah.
and how what their uh,
Response. Yeah.
yeah their whole response, their whole being, what
Yeah.
they're able to do.
Yeah.
Like some kids become very independent
Mm-hmm.
and um and focus on the world and manage the world and um really are very capable, but emotionally they're not so capable
Yeah. Yeah.
of connecting.
I see. Okay. So moving to the adult now that's listening and they see themselves in this dynamic and what you're describing, and they realize that, yeah, I am in a relationship where I'll do anything for this person, and I kind of get lost, and I'm more catering towards this person than I am myself. you know I'm not authentic anymore. How can you get that individual to get back to their authentic self and be comfortable with that?
Well, you have to know about it first.
Okay.
You have to know about what that you're doing there,
All right.
and that is um, and that may or may not happen.
Mm-hmm.
You see, if it depends, I think, upon the experience, the child's experience. If they get a little, then they know a little about love coming to them.
Mm-hmm.
If they don't get anything at all, they get just parents that are working and or off playing, and they're really getting nothing. Then we don't know how much the emotional damage is going to be. Until they're acting out or robbing banks, shooting people, angry.
Right.
They can. You can see we have a lot of problems in our
Yeah.
country.
Yeah.
It,
Absolutely.
okay, I'm only going to go there because I don't really know about the rest of the world.
Right.
But in the United States, people solve their problems. They act on their anger.
Yeah.
We are a country of emotional reactors.
Oh my gosh. I know.
And think about it. How young are we when we are able to emotionally be aware enough to and react? I don't know if that's a good question or not.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I
But
think.
how young? How young are we when we start blaming someone?
Mm, I would say maybe in adolescence. Do you think?
Oh no, way before
Way
that.
before
You did it.
adolescence.
No, I didn't do it.
Oh yeah,
You
yeah,
did
yeah.
it.
That thing. Okay. Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
Absolutely.
no. And that's, we start knowing about a self when we're really probably before 3. I'm not
Oh yeah.
into the development, but around 3 we're really pretty good. You did it. No, I didn't. You
Yeah.
did.
Yeah. You're right.
You know.
Right.
So a lot of us are still at that age
Isn't that something?
emotionally,
My goodness. Yeah.
wouldn't you say?
Yeah. Yes. I think we have some great examples on a day to day basis here in this world.
I
Yes.
think we have some great examples on a day-to-day basis.
I will not
We
say any
really do.
names, but
So
yes. Absolutely.
it's our emotional reactions then that get in the way of relating.
Yeah.
My parents sitting in the front seat of their car couldn't exist as emotionally as themselves and have a conversation about how to solve the money concerns of my mother, of my father,
Mm-hmm.
and my mother listened to my father's concerns. We have to be able to listen and care,
Right.
but we're not. We're
Gosh.
reacting. So it gets to be about the argument gets to be about what happened or what didn't happen, what you should have done or what you didn't do, and it's emotionally reactive,
Right.
and then there's no way to move from there. So my interest is in that moment.
Yeah.
Is how do you begin to move emotionally? Because every couple come in here, they're at odds with one another
Yeah.
somehow.
Yeah. 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 And that's where I was going to go next. You talk about the point in which, couples that come and see you, they may be in conflict or arguments and, or they're at each other's throats about a particular issue. And you identify that as the quote unquote in it moment.
Right.
And so this is what you're referring to, the in it moment in which, we're responding in a way in which we've been trained, I guess, to do through childhood, because we're not maybe emotionally mature enough um, to really listen and work with each other. And so, unfortunately, we're just reacting, like you mentioned. Is that correct?
Right,
Yeah.
right. We're not responding. We're reacting,
Yeah.
emotionally reacting. Then that moment gets to be about the emotional reaction because none of us can tolerate the emotional reaction of our partner. It
Yeah.
goes both ways.
Yeah. So it almost sounds like there's a need for relearning, because I'm just sitting here thinking about, okay, like, so how do we stop this? Like, because how does somebody identify something that is just so ingrained in them and so habitual, they just do it because they don't even recognize, but that's what they do. So,
And that's the question.
yeah.
I mean, that is the question because it's reflexive. This is fight or flight in that moment
Right.
between people. The couples come in and one of them wants to solve it now, can't tolerate the rift, the emotional disconnection between them, and the other says, "No, I need time. I got to go."
Mhm.
It's always opposite. Each
Right.
one can't stand what the other is can't can't bear what the other how the other is reacting
So,
because
yeah.
we get together with our partners unconsciously.
Mm.
We get together with people who offer us, I think, the opportunity to evolve. But it's torture if we don't know about that. That's what this whole thing is about.
Wow. Sounds pretty deep.
Well, I think the universe is pretty deep.
It is.
I
My gosh.
I don't think this is about happiness.
Yeah.
Why would the universe need this to be about happiness? It just isn't. We have to evolve here and learn how to have two people exist, I think, in the same moment in time. And the only way we can do that is to care about ourselves and care about the other in the same moment in time. But most of us don't get there to that experience. We only know how to um, fight about it
Right. Right.
or shut down and walk away about it or go have an affair about it
Mhm.
or
There it
shoot
is.
people about it.
Yeah.
We only know how to react.
Yes.
And I'm saying that's because our parents didn't have parents who could help them. And
Yeah.
then our parents could only do what they could do.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
there's no blame or judgment here. All I'm doing is looking at our evolution.
Right. So when you get couples in that are this in it moment, and you realize that this is what needs to happen, how do you um how do you train them or get them to actually listen to each other and to turn the
Oh,
ship around? I would think that that's probably one of the hardest things that you're facing in your line of work, and you've been doing it for 23 years.
well, I haven't been doing this for 23 years. I've
Okay,
been
right, right,
learning
right,
for
right, right,
23
right, right,
years.
right.
But, it's learning, uh, wanting to help. And couples are very difficult. I mean, individuals are difficult.
Absolutely. So you bring two people from two different walks of life or different spaces together, trying to, cohabitate and be one. And it's
Right,
like, ugh, yeah.
right. So, um, people, a lot of people come in though. I've seen many, 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 many couples, and the only thing that heals is love. But how do you get? It's exactly what you're saying. How do you have two people instead of the emotional of reacting because they think they're right,
Yeah.
we end up arguing about what happened or what didn't happen,
Right.
what you should have done, what you shouldn't have done, what you said, what you shouldn't, all this kind of stuff that is already, when we're arguing about it, is in the past. And now we're arguing about what happened. There's no point to that discussion. It's in the past.
Right.
And we don't know anyway. The only way we would know is if we had a recording, but we don't
Right.
most
Right.
of the
Right.
time.
Right. Right.
Okay. So we can't really go there. And it's really hard, but because we're having to go from reflexive behavior, saving oneself, really, in that moment. They're each are trying to preserve their self in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
And so the only thing that I think we have to understand is I am responsible for my own reaction.
Ah,
It
okay.
doesn't matter what reaction I have, but if I have an emotional reaction, I can count on it not working.
Okay.
My emotional reaction destroys the moment. So now, if there are two of us that understand that and can take responsibility, oh gosh, wait, stop. I'm sorry, I reacted. I'm talking about me. I'm not blaming the other. I'm not accusing. I'm not doing anything except talking about my mistake.
Right. And I would think that that will take a lot of emotional maturity then,
Yes,
because and I'm almost thinking too, you know, they probably wouldn't come to this unless they went to therapy and talk with someone like you.
right,
You know what I
right,
mean? To help them to
right.
identify that this is the cycle and this is what you're doing. And then once you've gone to therapy and you realize you're in this cycle and this is what you're doing, then you can possibly identify when you're there in the in it moment, and then you can make some decisions to do something different.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's a big growth
I know.
leap in emotional maturity. You're so right.
Right.
But we are not emotionally mature in this country.
That's right.
I mean, there certainly are people that are, but overall, we're not. When we resort to guns or killing people or beating people up, or I mean, look at us.
I know.
We're a mess.
It's a mess.
We are a mess.
Yes.
And there's no way to solve this whole thing that's going on with couples when they are interested in learning something new. Then yes, it becomes possible, but they really have to work on it.
Yes. They have to
They
be,
really want to have to grow up
yeah,
emotionally
and realize that they need to grow up too.
and realize they need to grow. Well, if they want their relationship to work, they have to have two people who are able to talk and solve the issue between them. They can always, 99% of the time, figure out how to handle things and have it work for both of them. But when they're in that young and an emotionally immature reaction,
Mm-hmm.
there's
Mindset.
no way.
Yeah.
Their relationship is a done deal.
My gosh. It's like an avalanche. It's just a horrible thing rolling downhill. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
a snowball.
it's snowball.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh.
yeah,
And imagine, like you said, I mean, you talk about how in a mess we are in this country right now, and you talk about, I can just imagine in different homes right now with the pandemic and people, it was said, I know some months ago when people were having to remain at home with the stay at home orders and everything, that there were a lot more domestic violence situations
Right.
happening. Couples seem to be fighting more because now they are forced to remain in a home together when they've usually been able to kind of walk out and go and do whatever.
Right.
And it just makes me sad to think, anyway, just on a regular, but now with this situation and what we're dealing with in this country, what these homes must look like, what relationships and marriages maybe look like right now, with all of this happening. And the fact that a lot of us are very emotionally immature and have no way of really understanding that they're in a situation where they're reacting and don't
Right.
know how to turn the ship around. That it's very sad and scary to me.
And don't even care about turning the ship around.
It could be.
A lot of people do, but a lot of people don't.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think they have the capacity to turn it around.
Yeah. So I'm hoping that our discussion right now, if there's somebody out there listening that does want to turn it around and maybe is resonating with what we are talking about, and maybe they've come to an aha moment and they're like, you know what? Wow.
Hmm.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I am doing. I am reacting. I'm not listening. I am, I have lost myself in this relationship. And, you know, um, I need to do something. So we need to help them. I'd like to give them some information on maybe the next steps because you talk about how important it is in the in it moment um, to apologize. How important
Hmm.
is apology in this?
Well, I think it's the beginning of the reconnection.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking here about going back a moment, but I'm not sure I want to. I hear what your question is.
It's okay.
Yeah, I'm going to go back a moment.
Sure.
We humans, in that in it moment, in our blaming, will say, "You did that to me." Okay,
Mm-hmm.
all right. In my book, we can never know what another person did to me if I'm saying what they're doing to me. I only know that I'm having a reaction to it, but I cannot know what they did to me. Does that make sense to you?
I'm trying to get there. So you cannot know what they did because you don't know their intent. Is that it?
Well, yes,
Mm-hmm.
because I am experiencing that moment from my neurons,
Right.
my experiences. So I am putting on that moment my understanding of that moment.
Mm-hmm.
So as soon as I go to say that you are, you know, you're doing this,
Right.
you're crazy, you, whatever. And as
Right.
soon as we're speaking with, starting a sentence with the word you,
Oh boy.
then we're in trouble
That's right.
immediately, because that's the blaming. We, as soon as the sentence comes out and it might be one word off for the other person, we're fighting about what was said, what happened, what didn't happen. So I think, number one, we can't talk about the other. We can only talk about ourselves. This is what I felt. This is how I experienced. And the only other thing I can do is, was that your intention? How many times do people say to their partner, that wasn't my intention? That's not where I was. I mean, I've said it, I don't know how many times.
Right.
That's not what I was doing. but that was their
Their
experience.
perception, yes, yes, of what they saw from their
Okay,
lens. Yeah, from their
exactly.
lens. Yeah.
From their lens, exactly. Now that was, and a lot of times I thought I was caring.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I was caring, and it didn't come off as caring. It's such a shock to have that happen.
Right.
Totally misread, totally, I mean, it's not felt.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we have to talk about ourselves. I don't know if it's possible for most couples to do that on their own.
Yeah. Right.
I don't think it is.
It's
It's
hard.
just because it's too emotionally loaded.
They almost need a
And
guide through that discussion. They almost need a guide, like, somebody to help them through that
right,
discussion. Doesn't
right.
just necessarily
Well,
happen.
I'm a big proponent of imago therapy,
Mm-hmm.
which um, is a very structured type of therapy that helps a couple learn how to listen to one another.
Wow. That is good.
And, and they're hoping in the listening, being able to listen, that then there can be empathy built for the other.
Yeah.
We cannot be in a relationship unless we have empathy. We can't really be in any human interaction unless we have empathy.
Yes. Wow. And there are some people that just don't have empathy.
No, you are so right. They just don't have empathy.
My God.
It's not in them. Never will be. Can't be. Their childhood was. I mean, I don't know if necessarily born that way, but certainly can happen in a very traumatic childhood.
Yes. Yeah. When you were saying that, I mean, I just thought in my mind about people that just, unfortunately, they just don't have it.
No, they
And
don't.
it's sad because it's like, okay, but they're in marriages and they're in relationships, and what does that mean for them, and what does that mean for the person that they're with? You know, Pretty sad.
Well, it means certainly means for the person that they're with that, but see, that person that they're with has often already experienced that trauma.
Mm-hmm. You got
So
it.
it's unconscious. You just find somebody that's going to do it to you.
It's like the dance. It's like you get a dance partner that, is right in sync with you, and you just jump right in, and there you go. You're off.
Yeah, and it's unconscious. It's like you see that person across the room,
Yeah.
and you're drawn to them. It is. I don't think that attraction of people is necessarily sexual. I think it's unconscious
Yes. I don't know what.
because the universe wants us to evolve and grow and love and care
Mm-hmm.
and become, wiser, better stewards, certainly, of our planet,
Right.
of
So,
our children, of
yeah.
our relationships,
Yeah.
wanting, needing us to grow up. But I don't know
Yeah.
about that.
It's
So,
difficult. So, in order to grow up, and I talked about this just a moment ago, I asked the question about an apology. It really takes somebody who's mature and ready to grow up, or maybe identifies that they need to grow up, or just trying to be better, to say, I apologize for that. That was not my intention. I wasn't, but I apologize if that hurt you or whatever. That takes a big person to be able to do that. Is that correct?
and not know why.
Yeah.
I mean, not know for themselves what they did.
Yeah. But willing to take a step back and maybe learn from that and then move forward with that
Right,
individual. Yeah.
right, right,
Takes work.
exactly. And that's a very difficult place for people because people don't. don't go into it to learn something. They go into it to shove whatever they want to shove down their partner's throat.
Wow. Yeah. This is something. So, Maureen, one more time before we go, because we're about to wrap up here. It's been very interesting. I can see why you've
Oh,
been
good.
on podcasts more than one time because we could talk about this. This could go in so many different directions, with this
Right.
conversation. But let's share your book and then when you think it'll be out again, and then also how the listening audience might be able to hear more from you. Maybe there's a website or something that they can, or social media. So how can they hear more from you?
Well, uh, the books I'm hope will be out in a month or
Okay.
so.
Okay.
And they're both books are just being republished. I am hoping to write a third book. I don't know when that one's coming.
Okay.
I'd like it to maybe within the year. Um, and what was your second question?
Your
I'm sorry.
website, social media, your
Oh
website.
yeah.
How?
I my website is Maureen Maureen for Ellen, but it's E Hosier HosierPhD, one word. If you start writing in Maureen, it will likely be in that little list that comes up.
Yeah. All right. Well, Maureen, this has been great. It has been great. And
It has been. Thank you.
a tough topic, I'll tell you. And oh gosh, a very deep discussion. It's somewhat much needed though. There's just a lot of couples out there hurting. Our
Oh,
world really
so
is
much.
hurting. Yeah.
Right, right.
And I'm hoping that through this, maybe somebody identifies some steps that they need to take. Maybe they'll do something different in their relationship. And of course,
And or seek help.
yeah,
That's one of my intentions too, is get help to learn how to have two people exist in the same moment.
yeah,
I don't know if you feel it in the way that I feel it,
yeah,
but two people have to exist. I exist in my mind, and the other person exists in my mind too, and I care.
right.
So that moment we can talk,
Yeah,
we can listen, we can learn.
exactly. All right. Well, thanks a lot,
Thank you.
Maureen. Thank you so much. And of course, you guys that are listening, thank you for listening to the Lovers Lounge podcast, where we talk to experts like Maureen and other guests on topics related to love, relationships, and sex. I'm your host, Tina Love. And until next time, peace. And of course, please don't forget this world, we need love.